Hey, everybody, and welcome to Corona Tapes 5. That's right, the 5th one. And this is the one that everybody likes to kick off about. And it's lockdowns and PPE. And yes, it's a ball ache. Yes, I think some of it's shit. But at the same time, what we're here to do is kind of go over like what it actually does, why you should or shouldn't do it, blah 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 blah. So we're both skeptical of it. Let's put it this way: this isn't, again, we're not. The whole point of these podcasts hasn't been to be like, you're all idiots because all of your negative comments are invalid. No, not at all. Most of them are valid,
You
but
squares.
it's like, unfortunately, some of it just has to be done because it's the only option we've got. That's usually the problem, is that we don't have a better method yet, or so as you say, sometimes it's like, as brave as you talk, you're still going to do what you're told. So, we might as well lump it. But anyway, so masks and PPE. Sam, what would you like to open with? What is your opening gambit?
I think one of the biggest issues sort of surrounding it has been, particularly with the lockdowns, is sort of understanding why we're locking down. It's not, and I think you and I both know, it's not going to just magically stop coronavirus.
No.
And that's potentially been misrepresented by media, government, people who don't necessarily use the right terminology. What it does is it slows it down. There's a lot of talk about the R number, essentially the rate at which the virus will transmit to another person. Well, one person infected, give it to another person. And so what it does is it serves to reduce that number. Now, there are other options available in the sort of background research to this segment. I did some on lockdown measures, and other, they call them sort of non-pharmaceutical interventions. So things like, so a lockdown is what is called sort of quite a drastic measure. A national lockdown, that's it. And there's other stuff like, closing schools, closing restaurants, bars, clubs, increasing sort of public hygiene, wearing face covering. These are all sort of other non-pharmaceutical interventions that can be used to reduce the spread. And a lot of the evidence that I've found so far is sort of globally in support of lockdowns as a measure of reducing the rate of infection. Obviously, there's wider sort of socio-economical sort of issues surrounding that. Rises in mental health presentations, I think it's probably a better term, rather than saying just people newly diagnosed with mental health problems. It's probably had them already. It's been exposed. Obviously, lots of small businesses having to close. It's difficult, to be honest, lots of big businesses having to close as well. But purely from it's kind of, what is the lesser of two evils? If you kept everything open, so lockdown, whatever, essential workers go to work, whatever, everyone else basically stay at home. So the economy gets a big hit. But then if you don't lock down, everyone goes to work, carries on as normal, loads of people are going to get sick, have to be off for X amount of time, the economy is still going to take a big hit. So it's about, I think, preserving the health and well-being. It's a difficult position to make. And I think when you look at it, because one of these studies that I found, I'll send you the links.
Yeah, I've got
them. It says that a combination of non-pharmaceutical interventions, so like just, specifically closing, let's say schools, for example, bars, clubs, whatever, reducing gatherings, potentially is more effective than just nationally locking down. There's, like I said, it's pretty much, it's widely considered that lockdowns are effective, but there's also other means. But no, like closing schools alone isn't going to stop it or slow it down. So it's finding the right balance. And I think you can see that in, I'm not defending necessarily the strategy that our government has implemented, but you can sort of see that they're trying to account for other aspects of, say, the economy and people's health and well-being with this sort of tier system, trying to allow people to go back to the gyms, have small gatherings. But it's finding the right balance. And again, a lot of the evidence says if you just release things too quickly, it's going to create this huge spike. And one of the an interesting one actually that I read, it was a study from Denmark that said, sort of summarizing here, you can see later, is that regional lockdowns are not effective as, say, airport control, border control, that sort of thing. But regional lockdowns have pretty much little to no effect. Now, bearing in mind that study was done in, I think, like northern Jutland, so it was only done in a country with a much smaller population in a region with probably a much smaller population. But the reasons behind this were, and again, this is why comparing sort of different country strategies is quite difficult. And some studies have actually tried to do that and done it quite well, actually. But this particular one, it attributes it to why this sort of the regional lockdown didn't really work, is that they already had widespread testing, and at the time that this regional lockdown was implemented, the cases had actually started to plateau. So we weren't seeing an increase so much in cases because it had already sort of reached that peak. But also there's a lot of quality information. The population trusts their government. When cases are identified, it's isolated very quickly. And population compliance, the population of those areas are very compliant in what they do. You don't need to force rules on people, because if you're telling people to just socially distance and whatever, culturally they just do it. It's you don't need to enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
And say 23rd of March last year, we were given that opportunity and we didn't take it. We were given that responsibility. And
I think,
and we all went to the beach.
yeah, but we didn't, though, did we? Like, I
not
mean,
all of us, but
on the 23rd of March, it was so, like, the government had basically ignored it. We thought it was something that was happening somewhere else, and then basically in the week leading up to it, we're like, oh shit, this is pretty serious. Because again, I traveled over that weekend and went up to Newcastle to see a friend, and on the day I came back was the day that the lockdown has been implemented. But it wasn't really anything before that, because it wasn't taken seriously. Like, the trouble is with every other pandemic that starts over in the East, it's like, I won't make it over here. Oh shit, it's getting a bit closer. Oh fuck it, it's shut down.
A little bit closer, a little bit.
Yeah, by the way, in a week we're going to shut down. And I think for the most part we did. But the trouble is, so
I suppose the media had a big part to play in misrepresenting.
and I think also the lockdown has been completely misconstrued, because the original theory of the lockdown, the original reason we went into it, was to quote unquote flatten the curve, to squash the sombrero, as it were, because the NHS, you look at America, lots of deaths, yes, in comparison to their population, probably levels out about the same as everybody else. I'm not saying that any death isn't tragic. I'm just sort of going on the numbers. Now, some of the states don't lock down, some of them do. It's kind of even, but the difference is they have a very different health system than we do, because ours is free to the point of use, and we will take on anybody that's ill. The reason we had to lock down is because even if these people aren't dying, they still have to be seen to. And we don't have the resources to see to everybody at once, which was the entire point of this lockdown.
Yeah.
Now, we did in the beginning stay locked down. We did for the first 2 or 3 weeks. Nothing happened. I mean, and it was because, I mean, I can firsthand say that even nature itself reclaimed the world. In the first 6 to 8 weeks of lockdown, I have never seen the sea so clear. I've never known the air to be so fresh. I've never known it to be so still. And we all did that. We all completely did what we were told.
I've never been able to get to work in 7 minutes.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, it's like, we did what we were told. And then all of a sudden the media got involved and the government kind of latched onto this idea that, well, we can keep everything suppressed and stuff. And it's like, I'm not saying, there's this whole freaking new Marxism wave that's happening, or it's fascism or whatever. It's like, if you really knew what that was about, you know, that they're actually doing a pretty good job of not, you know, we haven't reached genocide yet, and you know, eugenics. So I think we're all right.
You look at Myanmar, they've a complete social, internet blackout. That's
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, as well, regardless of whether you think this is getting more fascist or more communist or whatever, it's like we are allowed to criticize. You're not getting banged up because you've turned around and said the government's doing a shit job. So, you know, we're not quite there yet.
You have your right to say those things.
The trouble is that, again, it's distracting, and we keep the media doing their job in a good and a bad way. It's distracting away from the fact that we have a health system that is crumbling apart at the seams, which you can completely attest to from being on the inside, working on the inside, looking out, and we can look from the outside looking in. Now, the lockdowns are designed to try and stop that from happening, but it's like the trouble is all it's doing is highlighting how badly managed everything is. Now, yes, we could look at these other countries that have got different measures and stuff, like New Zealand is a good one. I mean, Australia's probably got the best model, because
we've seen that even that has flaws.
Oh no, it has flaws. What I'm saying is the compliance from the people, because it's done on 2-week blocks. So there's a COVID outbreak will come up. Okay, everybody's got to stay inside for 2 weeks. That's it. 2 weeks is enough to flatten it all out. We can identify who's got it. We can test everybody around. Everybody gets back out into it. So people will comply because they know that it's a 2-week block. They come back out. This is how they've been making it work. Again, you know, there are very few countries that are as densely populated as the UK, as we've said before. Now, we can look at France and England and compare the two and say, look, they've got equal sized populations. Yeah, France is like at least 3 times the size of the UK. It's humongous. And people are not densely populated. It's a lot of rural villages. There's not many real densely populated areas. Now, most of the UK's population sits across the middle of the country. London, the Midlands, Manchester, and Birmingham. So, you know, Manchester, Birmingham, the Midlands, London area. That's where your highest concentrations is. And the trouble is as well, I think the reason that the tier system wasn't working is because, and this isn't meaning to sound insensitive at all, but where you live had a massive effect on what tier you were in, whether you liked it or not. Now, the trouble is everybody on the South Coast, we are quite sparsely populated. I mean, the next real town you've got from Bognor is Havant, or maybe Littlehampton, and then you've got Worthing, and then it's all little hamlets and villages across the downs and stuff. There's no real big, I mean, even Chichester's not that big as a city.
It's a city, but it's not really a city.
No, it's only because it's got a cathedral. Like if you compare Chichester to Portsmouth, miles apart in size of population density. So the thing is, it's like it's very easy for us to keep things under control. If you live in Manchester or Birmingham or London, like in the nicest possible way, that's your fate. If anything comes in that's going to hit big populations, that's what you get for living there. And I'm not saying that it's your fault. You are, you know, you maybe didn't choose to live there, but that's what's going to happen. And the trouble is, these places are kicking off. Well, everyone else is getting to live their lives and we're not, because you live in these densely populated areas. It's like people in Somerset whinging that it floods when the key to the county name is Somerset. Summer settlement. Don't go here in the winter. It floods. We actually named the place after what you shouldn't do because we figured that out a really long time ago. Don't go to Somerset in the winter. We didn't call it Winterset. We called it Somerset. So you can't. There is a degree of like looking at it, and the trouble is the government actually is trying to be as fair as possible, which is why they redid all the tiers the second time to try and placate everybody, because nothing actually changed really.
No, they just rebranded the same thing.
They rebranded the same thing to make it a little bit more, we're going to put everybody out of tier 1 because, you know, it's not fair. And it's like, well, no, we didn't change anything. We didn't all of a sudden, you know, realize that, we're in tier 1, we best go lick some extra people to get the numbers up. The trouble was it was too many larger populated areas were kicking off because they didn't like the fact that they were taking the brunt of it. But then it's no different. You'd be like turning around and saying, if we flipped it the other way around, like if the coast, if the water levels were rising in the coast and all the coastal villages were getting done in, tarnishing London and Manchester and Leeds and all these inland cities with the same restrictions. They'd be like, well, what does it affect us? We ain't got no fucking sea near us. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways. You can't turn around and be like, well, why do they get to live in like lower tiers? Because we're not populated like you guys are. We're just not. But this is where the trouble with lockdowns are very, very tricky. And we can look at all these other countries. They don't have the population density that we're working with. I mean, everyone bangs on about New Zealand, and I think their model kind of works, but it doesn't in another way. But they have 5 million people over 2 islands. It's not even like it's 5 million people in one island. There's a big body of water between half the population. So it's very easy to work that out. Australia, there's nothing in Australia. You've got Perth on one end, which is completely isolated, which is why it actually is pretty easy to sort itself out. Darwin's at the top, and you've got more chance of being eaten by a salty than you have a freaking coronavirus. Alice Springs in the middle, a whole shitload of nothing. And then you've got the West Coast, which even then isn't, the cities aren't even really that big or that close apart. It's freaking miles between bloody villages. But that's why it's been so easy for them. And the trouble is, our media will look at what Australia's doing. Look at what these guys are doing. It's like, yeah, but they don't have a population of nearly 70 million people in the UK, or I think maybe even England alone. I'm not even sure what like Wales and Scotland are like. Even still, Wales and Scotland are minimal.
It's the UK. It's like 70.7 or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, at least a good 68 million people live in England itself without Wales and Scotland being put in the equation. And that's a lot of people in a small space. So you can't use those other models. Now, I think they should have absolutely shut down. If we're not allowed to travel out, don't let people travel in unless it's for freight goods, because freight goods are very easy to control. I don't know why people are still traveling. That shouldn't be allowed at all if you're going to sit there and make all these claims that it's hard to control. It's like, well, it is if you shut the borders off. Like people, like in the nicest possible way, we're not allowed to go anywhere anyway. So there's no reason for anybody to go out or come in unless you're a national and you come home and you have to be kept an eye on, like they do in Australia. If you can only travel if you're an Aussie national and you've got a lockdown, and they sort it all out. It's not perfect, but it's about as good as it's going to get. But I think we're trying to dance on too many people's dance floor. We're trying to keep everybody happy. It's like being a host of a party and trying to interact with all the different groups you've got turning up. You're not going to fully you're not going to find the solution to the problem because you can't fully do it. We're trying to keep one group of people happy, but, we'll have to deal with that. But what about the borders coming in? Well, we don't really want to be that authoritarian about it. It's like, maybe you do. Maybe you just actually do. And I think
you almost have to. I mean, especially when we talk about all the variants from different areas, different countries and stuff. I mean, the virus mutates. We know that's what viruses do. So you're just allowing people in and out of the country for no real good reason. Most people have found a way to work from home. You don't need to go to, fucking Barcelona or wherever you're going.
But you don't have to.
You could, you don't need to necessarily. Why can't you do it at home on a laptop?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, maybe some jobs you can't, but. How many people have been made redundant as a result of this? But why do these people get to travel? Because they've got the money to be able to afford it. But even with this, I think the Scotland travel ban, there's a ginormous loophole in it. Some family came from America, stopped off in Dublin, and then flew it. And they were allowed to just go home.
Yep. But this is the thing, is if you come directly from a red ticket country, you have to quarantine. If you stop off in a non-red because your last port of departure was an allowed country, you can get around it.
And it's bonkers.
It makes absolutely no sense.
I had a classic social media rant about it. It's like either you drop all the restrictions or you impose them properly.
Yeah.
Because that loophole is there for a reason, because someone high profile is going to exploit it.
Yeah, because
it's been left there for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the trouble is then, isn't it?
The
loophole's not the problem.
Allow people to go in and out of the country. You just got to stay in a hotel for 10 days.
Yeah, the loophole isn't the problem. It's the fact that only so many people can exploit the loophole. That's the only reason people have a problem with loopholes, is because not everybody can exploit them. Or not everybody figured it out. Like, when You look at all these people that have got bloody good accountants that squirrel money away.
Oh, the Jimmy Carr.
Jimmy
tax
Carr,
budget.
yeah. Jimmy Carr is a prime example, right? Jimmy Carr managed to squirrel £3 million away, and his accountant said, "Yep, I can do that for you." Right? He didn't actually do anything wrong.
Was it tax aversion or tax
I
avoidance?
don't think it was. I think basically everybody got pissed off that he managed to squirrel away not paying tax on £3 million because his accountant basically did it in available loopholes. It's no different to all these celebrities that started putting money into tax loopholes and everybody kicked off about it. It's like, but you could do that. The only reason you're pissed off is because you haven't got the and it's usually in the nicest possible way. Like as somebody who pays tax through self-employment, everybody has the same opportunity. You can claim back on expenses. You can find reasons to justify it if you know what you're doing. That's why everybody hires an accountant. If you're PAYE, you don't have the option to do that. And that's in the nicest possible way. The people that get pissed off are the people that aren't in the same situation. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes what they do, I'm not saying those loopholes should be there. What I'm saying is that if you don't have the means to exploit that loophole, then you get pissed off with a loophole. Well, what the fucking loopholes everywhere? It's like, yeah, but the moment you can use it, it's okay. So it's
I think in that circumstance,
with the travel one, it's farcical. It's like if you come in from a red country, you've got to quarantine. What if I come in from a non-red country after being in a red country? Oh well, we don't really know what we did. We didn't think of that. You did, but you kept that little gate open so that anybody who figures it out, i.e., your guys that you already told that you could do that, is fine. Yeah. But if anybody else cottons on, then the loophole becomes an issue. That's the problem with it, isn't it? Like we all have that little side gate that you tell your mates, "I'll come around the back, nobody will know." But as soon as somebody else figures out, what are you using the back gate for? It's like, well, you kind of left it there for a reason. You're just pissed off that somebody else figured it out. That's what you're annoyed about.
It's bonkers, isn't it? But I mean, that just frustrates. I'm not particularly. I mean, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, and fine, if these people want to exploit the loophole, but the loophole shouldn't be there. That's the whole point. We're trying to stop the spread of a virus, and you're sort of freely allowing people in, essentially through the back door.
Right.
And it's not through the back door; it's through the front door.
Through a massive revolving door that never closes.
And so it sort of undermines all the work that we all as a country have been doing to largely following the rules as best as we can, and wearing all the PPE, people being made redundant, people dying, you name it, and you just undermine it all by just letting people come in and out of the country unessentially. It's
I think this is the trouble. So what is essential anymore? Because you've got the government saying like only essential travel, only this, that, and the other, and then I tell you what fucking mashed it for the government. The moment Dominic Cummings drove fucking halfway across the country for a quote unquote eye test, it's like everyone went, "Mate, nah, not having that. Like you've lost."
It's not that bad. You shouldn't be driving up to Cumbria.
Well, there is that. But this is what I'm saying. Like, but in theory, they never said you couldn't go and isolate near family members, but they didn't say you could either. So this was again this whole thing with the loopholes. Now Dominic Cummings technically, quote unquote, didn't do anything wrong by driving up there to be an isolated family estate near his parents, so that for childcare reasons, if they got sick, somebody could have the kids. The trouble is that we all interpreted it as don't go anywhere, stay where you are. Now, it was never explicitly said like that, but because we took the government's word as is, and it was told you need to isolate and stay where you are, to whatever wording effect was, because I looked into this and I was like, how's he got away with it? Because surely like it was a blatant disregard. And they were like, no, because nobody said you couldn't. And this is the loophole. If you read it and interpret it in a way that it's all of it is about interpretation and what you can justify. It's not what you know. It's what you can
prove. You argue that that loophole was that. Can
you justify your actions using the wording that was given out? Yes. Well, then you can technically do it.
But then we could all essentially do that with the essential travel.
You can, but that's what I'm saying. You can, but because we have a moral obligation not to, because we actually want to come out of this, the majority of us don't. Now, there's a small minority that go, but it doesn't say I can't. So why shouldn't I? And we all go, well, because morally it's wrong. And you're like, yeah, but it's not technically undoable. It's not doable. I could still go. That's why everybody fucked off to Dubai to do essential influencer work. You technically can. You technically can.
I just,
you know, and this is
got to
the
move
thing.
on
It's
quickly
like,
from that subject.
you know, the thing was, when it comes back to maybe getting out and going on a holiday in the summer abroad, there will be a loophole. There will be an absolute loophole.
Yeah. Oh,
because they can't completely shut it down, because then none of the politicians can go on holiday. And they won't be able to hide it, because for some reason politicians don't understand that we can see everything that happens now. Don't know why they haven't figured that out yet, but we can. So the key will be is what I would urge people to do, and I know it's maybe goes against the whole lockdowny thing, but it's like, look, fuck it. If your mental health is suffering and there's a fucking loophole there, just be clever enough to see where it is. But the trouble is, you're dealing with a moral dilemma. It has nothing to do with legality. It's a moral dilemma. They've said we should lock down. So the majority of people go, you know what? Okay, that's what everybody said we should do.
If that's going to help this get done quicker, let's do it.
Now, the trouble is, as time's gone on, and we've realized the tier system actually did the job. Shielding, tier system, isolating pockets of places and trying to restrict travel was actually doing a pretty good job. We had a spike. It became winter. Of course we had a spike. You knew this was coming. Pretty piss poor planning on your part. Now, we're now in a point where any loophole that's available, you bet your ass we're taking it, because we've had enough. You can only, and this is the on the psychological level, and this is the key thing, because I was talking to one of my elderly clients the other day while I took him for a sort of walk to help rehab him, because he's been stuck inside for 12 months, is you're taking away hope. And that is the most dangerous thing you can do to a group of people, to an individual. Now, once you take hope away for so long, people stop listening, because we need hope. We need a future. We need something positive that's coming in the future. When you run the risk of complete nihilism, and that's where everybody's at the moment. There is no excitement in the country at the moment, because we have no idea when we're coming out of this. Now, Boris has a very big fucking job, and we've spoken about this privately before this podcast, saying that Boris can't physically enforce another lockdown. Technically, the lockdown finishes on Sunday. So on Monday, before his announcement, we can all go out and we can't get prosecuted for it. We actually could, because the lockdown law is finished, which is why he has to make the announcement on Monday pretty quick, sharpish, and why there's so many people going, no, we need to know before, because I have to physically shield with my vulnerable people before that. And as soon as the law finishes, I don't know what I need to do yet. Now, he has to give the country something, even if it's just a glimmer of hope, because if he doesn't, he will have lost us all. We are on a razor's edge at the moment, because there's no hope. And if you take that away completely, anarchy sets in, and it always does. It always does. From the dawn of time, it has. When you finally give adults and children no prospect of a future that looks positive, people will start making anything sound positive, because they need to start. And this is where you have those problems where people come in with radical ideas, go, no, because I've had enough. I've had enough of having nothing, and now I'm going to go make something. And then all it takes is someone to go, yeah, actually, fuck it, I'll take me a piece of that. Because
when you've essentially got nothing to lose,
that's it.
Yeah. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to remain in the situation that I'm in. That book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
Which finds essentially hope in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
It's a really good example of that.
It's Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, isn't it? It's like he got captured, put in the Gulag, and then went, well, how was this my fault? You know, how did I get here? You know, it's not like, no, you were taken over by an occupying force. The only way you've got to make sense of it is going, well, did I get myself here? But then we could flip it. The only reason Hitler came to power is because they were in the same situation we were in, but it was imposed by 3 other countries.
Yeah.
Germany gets suppressed. It gets no hope. There is no hope going forward, because they're completely stuck where they are. And someone says, nah, I'm not having that anymore. Guy's a fucking whack job. But everyone goes, sounds better than where we are. What have we got to lose?
It can't be worse.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing can be worse than being financially ruined, prospectually ruined, and being told you're a piece of shit every day for just being German. Well, fuck it. This guy says I don't have to feel those things. And that feels pretty good than where I am. I'm going to follow this guy. Well, Jesus, history repeats. It's like, kind of get with the program, dude. And like on Monday, if he doesn't say at least one good thing is happening and there is an end in sight, it is going to erupt.
But the promising thing is that the data is heading in the right direction.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the R rate's not even, it's 7 and 9, isn't it? It's not even between something and 1 anymore. It's under 1.
Yeah, and I say infections are coming down, hospitalizations coming down.
Weather's getting better.
Weather's getting better.
Well, in Bognor, it's
not causal or just a correlation.
I think it's partly both, actually. It generally is, because it was proven last time round that vitamin D and sunlight and stuff. It doesn't do well in sunlight, and that's why even when
we talked about this before, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think on the very first segment is that actually it lives longer in cold areas and colder surfaces.
Like most fluid type bugs do. They don't do well in the summer because UV light is destructive. UV light destroys things on any surface. That's why it bleaches your clothes and your hair, for God's sake. Like it's radiation. And in the summer, we're exposed to it more. Vitamin D is a natural immunobooster anyway, which is why we should be supplementing with it anyway, because we don't get enough of it. Even in the summer, we still can be deficient. But this is the problem, isn't it? Like the summertime.
Good for bone density too.
Indeed. But this was the thing. We were very lucky last year that summer started incredibly early, like super early. And it lasted forever. It just lasted forever. And I'm praying, because winter was like this last year, that we get a second wind of that, because I would be totally down for that. But that's what allowed us it lured us into a false sense of security, but it didn't, because we should have been on the ball enough to go, look, clearly this is following the same strain as flu-like things. It doesn't like the sunlight. We've got a massive window of opportunity here to really get our shit together. But they just hoped that it wouldn't come back. There was the talk of the second wave and the big scare, and then it turned up, and everyone went, we better lock down again. It's like, you knew it was coming. You knew. You just didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
It's like watching lava flow down the mountainside, and it's going to get to you in a week, and you stand there, and then when it gets to a day before, the lava's here. Like, you saw it coming. Jesus, you did nothing.
This burny molten rock.
Yes, that's the earth is vomiting, and we're not doing anything about it. Okay. The god Vulcan has awoken, and he's not too happy about it. Maybe we should throw some sacrifices back in to calm him down.
just get a big fire extinguisher out.
Yeah.
This needs foam. So I mean, hopefully come Monday, if things will start improving, hopefully, I mean, it's not snowing and freezing cold. It's obviously now back to rain. But that's the UK. But things hopefully will be going in the right direction, and sort of from a work perspective, we're seeing less of the COVID cases coming in. A lot of query stuff, because we still have to, if you come in with a cough, we still have to treat you as if you might have it.
Yeah.
But we're quite quick in testing, and
that is not.
Yeah. So as soon as we know that someone isn't, bang, out you go. Hopefully come Monday.
So let's move on to PPE, because this is one of my favorite things that people get proper aggy about. And
so this is probably going to focus predominantly on the face mask, because that's all we really.
I mean, shall we take a moment to laugh at America and Dr. Fauci, where he's like, yes, well, maybe 2 masks work better than 1. It's like, I mean, or you could just get better masks. Like, there's an idea. Like, why are you saying, it's like buying a ripped t-shirt and going, if you wear 2 ripped t-shirts, they'll keep you warmer than the first ripped t-shirt, or you could just have a t-shirt with no rips.
One fully.
Yes, just wear a fully functioning t-shirt. It's like my mask, as I've said before. I either wear a bandana, like just a polyester bandana that I normally use in my hair, cover it across my face, nothing gets through it. Like, I have literally sat there and blown through it and nothing comes through. Works perfectly fine if you don't want to wear a mask. Or I went and bought a mask with interchangeable filters where nothing gets through it and I can wash it. Like, the amount of money it costs to keep buying disposable masks, which are fucking dog shit for the environment as well. The amount of fucking masks I find across the floor and on the beach pisses me right off.
Working in healthcare, which is a big producer of waste, it breaks my heart.
Yeah,
the amount
and
of
it's
plastic
like
and shit we get through.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, luckily over here we haven't come because I think we're all slightly more sensible than going, yeah. Oh, you could wear 2 masks. You fuck off, mate. I mean,
Well, you say that. Let's should we open this up? You tell me the most ridiculous face covering that you see, and I'll tell you mine because I've seen something completely hilarious.
I mean, to be fair, down here it's all been pretty sensible from what I've seen. I mean, you get the odd scarf, you get the odd snood. I mean, some people outright refuse. I honest to God, nearly decked somebody in the Tesco's around the corner from me the other day because I know the security guy. He's a member at the gym, and this foreign guy was going, "You don't have a right to tell me to put on a mask." And he's like, "Yes, I do. Like, I actually do. It's a fucking
now
store
actually
policy."
the law.
He even handed him one. I said, "Look, I'm going to give you a mask. You don't even need to buy it. I'll just give you a mask. You can't tell me." And he sat there getting itchy. My old dormant instincts were kicking in. I'm like, "Mate, I'm gonna fucking drop you in a minute. I will beat you to death with that fucking broccoli you've got in your hands. Like, what are you doing? Stop being a dickhead." But the trouble is, because the shops have no real authority, the guy was like, "Oh, well, it is part of policy." And you're just like, "I'm gonna beat you to death with anything."
It's
in the
a law
store
now, though, isn't it? Or is it the law?
But the
now?
trouble is, they can't enforce it. This is another thing. We'll go into another time. Like, it's quite toothless. A lot of the stuff that the shops are allowed to enforce.
Yeah, they just have to call the police anytime anything.
Yeah, that's all they can do. But I mean, as it goes, I've not seen anything. I mean, on the internet there have been some howlers, but actual in a round face to face in Bognor, it's actually been pretty.
I saw a fantastic one. Gosh and I were just walking in Chichester with a sanitary towel, a feminine hygiene product, taped to their face.
I mean,
I was like, to be fair, it's absorbent.
Yeah, and it filters.
I was like, wow. I'll just go back and sort of beginning at sort of how we did the lockdown one. So obviously doing the sort of research stuff on this, pretty much all the evidence is face masks work in reducing the spread, limiting the spread. As we mentioned before, the way it spreads predominantly it spreads respiratory droplets through nose, mouth, and even eyes. So covering it is covering your nose and mouth, going to protect you, and it's also potentially going to protect other people as well.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I really had it wasn't an eye opener because I do wear my mask when I go into a shop anyway. I always have done. But I tell you what, it wasn't until it got really cold and I was having a conversation with somebody and I just happened to say something, or like the amount of steam projection that came out is a good 4 foot. And I was like, you just think, fuck yeah. And I almost directed my head away. So I was sort of puffing it in some
and this
direction.
So one of the studies I looked at, it has quite a good like visual sort of infographic. It's like a video of someone talking and it's in a controlled environment. And it uses like a dye to highlight the respiratory droplets, like over 4 or 5 feet. That's why they're saying stand 6 feet away from people if you can. And you walk around the shops and people aren't doing that. And the thing is, even with face masks.
But you know what the funny thing is it's like that's why you wear the mask, because it's very difficult to maintain a constant cognition of 6 foot.
Yeah.
Like if everybody managed to stay 6 foot apart, you wouldn't need to wear the mask, which actually we never used to.
No, but that's at the time we didn't.
You just
we
had
didn't
to
know
keep
about the
that 6 foot
transmissibility of
distance.
COVID. Because I was very scared. I was like, well, why are we only wearing them now?
Yeah, because it's like because actually you can't help because everybody moves at different speeds. When you're in a supermarket, you are just going to want to try and get round.
Even the footpaths aren't designed for more than one person.
No, you're not. But you know what? That's the one thing I've really found that really breaks my heart a little bit, how people will actively try and avoid you on a footpath now.
I don't mind it.
Well, I mean, the size of you, dude, people would have to move into the road anyway. You're the size of a barn door.
Well, no, but see, because people always expect me to move. If I don't, if I stand my ground, I end up just shoulder charging someone and then they'll get waggy about it. So, well,
somebody did that to me once. I was in my Leicester
You could
Tigers.
move as well.
I was in my Leicester Tigers top, and I had my daughter in my hands, and I was just walking to Morrison's, and this guy clearly thought I was going to walk into the road. I was like, carrying child, absolutely not. And he bounced off my shoulder, and he went, "Oh, fucking hate rugby players." I was like, "Or you could just move, you knob." It's like I am carrying a child, a small, tiny version of myself, and I'm not going to walk into the road. Like it's not happening.
It's not his child, and we are basically just apes.
We are.
So
unfortunately, I'm quite a large ape in comparison to most people, and holding my child, I become proper silverback mode. It's like, yeah, I will climb to the roof and swap planes if I have to.
And also, obviously, I mean, these masks we're sort of all being advised to wear. They're not airtight, and the reason that we're sort of not being advised to get like the full respirator, FFP3 stuff, is that they should really be reserved for health and social care workers where they're greater risk.
Well, it's the combination effect, isn't it? If you can manage to stay about 6 foot away and wear a mask that may not be like the best quality, you're still going to offer enough protection. If we all do it, it's generally fine, isn't it? It's no in the same way. It's no different than you look at contraception. It's no fucking different. You could just take the pill. You could just use a condom. Both of these are only like 94% effective, but if you use them together, you've got a better chance of not having a child or catching anything. So, it's like it's up to you what you want to do. But if we just advise everybody to kind of do a bit of everything, you've got more chance of generally not happening. And so then you only have to save the really, super made. Like I would rather not have a full respirator, know that my doctor has it, and go, look, okay, I'll stay 6 foot away and put a mask on and think, well, where's my respirator? It's like, because your doctor's got it. Yeah, fair enough. You have it. I don't need it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
The guy actually dealing probably maybe with COVID patients.
Yeah, the guy that's like got his arm halfway down someone's, chest cavity to try and manually pump their heart or some shit. Like, no, you take it. Take all of it. Like, I don't need it.
Yeah, you know what? You can have that.
Yeah.
And so a really interesting thing that popped up on one that I've sent all the links is that for the general public, it doesn't really matter what mask you should. Obviously, they advise on like certain fabrics and whatever, but compliance is more important than the fabric. If you're going to wear something that's comfortable and you're more likely to wear it, that is as good as a surgical mask.
Yeah. Well, that's why that's why they've just said face covering, though, isn't it? They haven't specifically said mask. It's just you have to cover your face. So most of the time I wear a bandana because it's more comfortable.
Yeah.
If I'm with my clients who I'm allowed to go and see because I'm basically their primary carer, I'll wear the mask because it is a more secure and adequate fit.
Yeah.
And it's more protective. But if it's just for the sake of I'm going walking around and I can just wear a bandana over my neck and just pull it up when I go into a shop, it's more comfortable. And this is that's why they've said that, isn't it? It's like, it doesn't matter what you cover your face with, just make an effort to cover your face. Like that's the best thing you can do is just try and cover your face. Like just do that.
They do advise against the visors. And obviously that's quite a logical thing given that's not actually covering your nose and mouth.
No.
So I know there's this whole thing about, particularly when like supermarkets started enforcing this face mask and face covering rule, people started kicking off because, what if I can't wear a mask? And there are reasons behind it, and
of course there are,
so on. But you have to think about the sort of model of transmission, how it's, having essentially a screen and a big open gap that's actually giving access to your, nose and mouth. You're still a risk. And vice versa, it's still a risk to others.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of those, isn't it? It's just trying to find compliance in any way, shape, or form. The amount of people that are wearing a face shield vastly are outnumbered by those wearing masks. So I suppose,
no, of course, and it's the ones that I've seen are actually, they go below the chin and they cover the sides. They are as effective as they can be, given what they are. So no issues with that. It is what it is. I understand what it's like. With regards to, I hate wearing a face mask because it's sort of complex trauma. It happened years ago. Sadly, at work, I have to, and I've just found a way to just suck it up and get over it. Sometimes I just go out every now and then, just breathe some actual air, and that's sort of how I get around.
So leading on to that, because here's some things that have obviously been put out. is wearing a mask going to give you any kind of respiratory disease? People are saying, oh, you can get COPD and pneumonia and all that stuff from wearing a mask all day. And it's like, well, first of all, clearly not, because the mask you've been
Surgeons have been wearing them all day for years.
When a surgeon has to do a surgery that lasts 18 hours, they're not all of a sudden getting COPD and stuff. But also, I suppose, you know, it's like, why would you be wearing them all the time anyway? Unless you have a job that requires it, you wouldn't necessarily need to. And then, you know, if you do have a job that requires it, you'd clearly invest in a mask that is going to give you the best option. Like, even,
So
you know, it didn't make any sense.
In one of these studies, it says that the ones that we sort of wear sort of day to day, they're not airtight. So all the CO2, all this sort of stuff, it goes out. Obviously, we still get the heat from the breath, but that's
right. But on the most part,
most of the
CO2 is going.
It's pretty much all of it is going. The FFP3s, they have, you know, filter systems and stuff like that, so it's going in there, and you wouldn't be wearing them for any sort of extended period of time. So there's no risk that 2 or 4 hours, I think the maximum you should be wearing it before you should change it. It's something like that. So yeah, they're more airtight, obviously fit tighter, but the filter systems and where the mask is designed, it's not going to cause any negative sort of health problems from your own breath.
I mean, the funniest thing is that the things that we should wear a mask for at the most times, we don't even anyway. Like, I've never known there to be such an aversion to masks. I think that,
because we've been told we have to.
Yeah, exactly. It's seen as a sign of oppression.
That's it. That's the only reason.
It's like, don't get me wrong, like when I worked in a swimming pool and I'm dealing with chlorine and acid and chemicals and stuff, I didn't put a mask on. I should have done. Literally in the PPE thing, literally says in the cost sheets, you know, you probably want to wear some sort of protective clothing. I'm opening buckets of chlorine tablets and getting a fucking waft of dust and going, oh, that cleans you out. There we go. Don't get it wet and you're fine. You know what I mean? Like, you sit there and you've got a stubborn stain and I pour 4 different cleaning products together. You shouldn't do that because it's going to make some form of poisonous gas. We all fucking do it because I want to get that stain out the floor.
Yeah.
But at those points, if someone says, you know, or, you know, you're a plasterer and or you're dealing with asbestos, you put a fucking mask on because you don't want that shit in your system, and that's fine. Yeah, someone says that you just need to wear a shop when you go in a mask because it's in closed space. Oh fucking hell, this is communism. You're like, bruh, seriously, come on now. Like,
well, if you want
to get pissed off about this, I agree with you. There's a lot of things we should be pissed off about, but just, you know, wearing a mask,
it's not actually that much of an inconvenience, is it?
Really isn't. Like, the more, you know, the biggest inconvenience is fucking remembering the damn thing. That's what pisses me off.
I just leave one in my car now. I've got one. I cycle between sort of 2 or 3 of them. I'm washing it, but I just keep one in the car.
And that's why bandanas work, because I usually use them to keep my hair back, so I can just take it off and put it around.
I need long hair again.
You do. You really do.
I do. But there's been loads of like social media. There's a guy going around like filming staff in Tesco, guys going in not wearing a mask, and they're asking to wear a mask, and he's just kicking off calling them Nazis. It's like, well, first of all, they're just trying to enforce a law that they have to enforce. It's their job. They have to at least try.
The trouble is, it's when you've got and this is the moral dilemma as well. And this has always been the problem with the PPE.
There's no benefit to doing that. What, you're just calling out people for doing their job.
But what I'm saying is, it's not even that though. Like, it's the ones that. The reason people have a problem is it's not the people in the shop that are trying to enforce it. It's the quote unquote self-righteous arseholes that go around telling people they should be wearing a mask and they're just general members of the public. Civilization isn't that civilized. Like, civilization works on a whole to keep everybody quite civil, so we're not killing one another. But on an individual basis, it never works. It doesn't work now. Civilization is designed to that. It civilizes people. When shit hits the fan, the first thing that crumbles is civilization. The first thing. And this is why we looted.
We all turn back into it.
Which is why we hoarded. Because it takes one person to see shit hitting the fan and going, fuck, I'm going to get as much of this as I can. Then somebody next to him goes, hang on a minute, have I missed a trick here? Why is he buying all that stuff and I'm not? Then I'll do it. Then it's a cascading effect.
Like mob mentality, isn't it?
Exactly, because the moment something threatens society, it becomes every man for himself, and it always will, because it has to. Because society only works when there's stability. So civilization comes in, and the trouble is you've got these people that are walking around shops going, excuse me, why aren't you wearing a mask? And they're like, do you work here? Well, no, but you should be wearing it. And then it is well, who the fuck are you to tell me that?
Now, I think of that is like, just stay in your lane. If you don't like, just avoid them. Because
yeah, I mean,
it's not worth the bloody
like
hassle.
I said,
It's
like
not
I
your,
said,
it's
at
not your
Tesco's, if
job.
it's a Tesco worker saying to you, or supermarket worker saying, come on, buddy, you got to wear a mask or you can't come in. Don't be a knob, put the mask on. Don't be a knob and just put the mask on. If you see somebody not wearing a mask and you've got one on, just do what you
leave
got
them
to
alone.
go.
Just leave them alone. Avoid them. Just stay away from them.
I mean, if anything, if you're that worried about it, them not wearing a mask because they're spreading, you shouldn't be going near them anyway. Like, surely that's the logical thing to do. Like, to limit the risk. It's like stay away. But if you're that arsehole that walks into a shop, even now it's been made law, and that security guy, that Tesco person is just doing what they've been asked to do. They're just saying, look, dude, I've got to enforce it. I may not agree with it, but I have to enforce it. And you're kicking off and being a dick. It's like, no, you are just a dick. Like, you deserve everything.
Now you're just being a dick. There's no benefit to what point are you making?
Yeah, like you're not a hero here. You are not a hero. Like everybody who's turned around and said, as soon as lockdown and PP, all of these, as we've said before, all of these lions that aren't the sheep and go, well, you know, I'm not having this and I'm not wearing no mask. Go, all right, then get all of you get together and have a gathering. Well, no, because I might catch COVID. Then that's why you have to do this. Like, you are so brave when you think that your sensibilities are being questioned. Yet when someone says, okay, if that's
someone actually calls your bluff,
put it into action, then go have a social gathering. Well, no, because I might get it. Well, if you might get it, that's why we've said it. It's like we're not doing this to invoke some form of new wave of nationalism. It's because because as a society, we understand that you're not going to get everybody to agree. You can't.
No, actually, one of the studies says they'll settle with about 80%.
Exactly.
Obviously, the ideal is 100, but 80%
you can
isn't
be
acceptable.
The 20% that doesn't do it, but understand that the only reason that we haven't come down too hard is because we kind of expect there's going to be some people that aren't comfortable with the idea.
Yeah, there's always
You're allowed to be uncomfortable with it. I don't particularly like wearing them. I think they're a pain in the arse.
It's horrible. I work for 12 hours a day and my face is melting.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, not literally melting. It's just very warm.
Not literally melting. But this is the thing, and it's like, you know, it's the language used makes me laugh because I have no problem with people not being happy wearing masks. I completely agree with you. I don't like them. I can see why they work. It's like lockdowns. I don't think lockdowns work, but we'll do it. I'm not going to sit there and defiantly go and really take the piss. But the trouble is, there's so many people out there, and the trouble is, people buy into that idea like this person's standing up against the establishment. It's like, but they're not. They're telling you they will, but they won't put it into practice.
No, they're just being difficult people. Because
they're voicing their opinion, which you may agree with, and it's fine. You know, oh, well, when all this is over, rah, rah, you know, it's like, oh, what, when all it's over, you'll start kicking off. Brave man. You're the guy that gobs off to the doorman as you're walking away. That's who you are. That's how brave you look. You're not going to go and do it. You're just going to sit there and be like, oh, well, yeah, this is all fucking bullshit. If I had my way, I'd be going out and living my life. Go and live your life then. Well, no, because I don't want to get like arrested or like, oh, I might get COVID. Well, then you've just proven your own point. You're just in a bad mood, and that's fine. Be in a bad mood, but don't sit there and try and incite other people to do dumb stuff just because you're pissed off. It's like, use a bit of this, you know.
That's it, isn't it? And I've done a few posts about sort of accountability in the things that we say, because we have the right to say whatever we want.
Yeah.
However, there is a responsibility that comes with saying certain things.
Yes.
Now, if you start inciting, racial hatred and just, whatever, like homophobia and things like that, you are going to be committing an offence, and you will be punished for that offence. I actually think the same should apply in terms of this particular sort of pandemic-y issues that we're going on. People just say, "Oh, just go out and do stuff," but you're potentially endangering others.
I think the issue is, though, isn't it, is because nobody's fully agreed on what is and what isn't harmful speech with this.
It's a fairly new concept.
It takes a long period of time before you get a societal consensus on what is classed as dangerously
it's taken this long to decide what's racist and homophobic.
Jesus, yeah, exactly. And even that, the
goalpost keeps shifting all the time. It's so tragically just bad.
Yeah, and well, I mean, look what happened to that Gina, whatever her face is from The Mandalorian, who got fucking dropped by Disney for saying something that wasn't even anywhere near what everybody was claiming it to be, but she got dropped anyway. Joke, absolute joke.
Which is the whole thing, isn't it? People like sponsors and people like dropping people who have been maybe accused of doing certain things before they actually get all the facts, because they just don't want to be associated with that negative.
Happened to that country singer, didn't it? That country singer who came back one night.
That was it, yeah.
This is the hypocrisy.
That's what I was thinking of.
This country
got dropped by their label.
Yeah, the country singer came back one night with his friends who were black, and they were all pissed and drunk. And he said to them, "Oh, make sure you look after that drunk ass N-word." And his mate laughed at him and went, yeah, I'll be all right.
And everyone went berserk.
And everyone kicked off. Yet Nick Cannon referred to white people openly in a podcast as the uncivilized barbarians, and the white people are the true uncivilized apes, and the black people are such and such. And this was all said on his thing, yet he's allowed to come back and it's fine. Now, I'm not saying either of them should have said what they said, but it's like, if you're going to allow it in one box, it has to be allowed in the other box. Like I remember being on the Doors, and one guy turned around, a guy of color, used this kid who was kicking off skin color to try and bait him. So when the kid turned around and used his color, he looked at me and went, "You can let him say that?" I went, "You started it. Yeah. You brought race into this. He merely counteracted you with the same ammunition you were firing."
The solution to that is, right, both of you, off you go.
Well, I did. I threatened to punch every one of them. I went into dad mode and I went, "If you want to be big, hard men, how about you be big, hard men with me, and I'll smack every one of you." And they all sort of went, "Sorry."
Right, over my knee.
Pretty much. It was like there were all these 18-year-olds kicking off, and I was like, "I've had enough of this." Right, dad voice is coming out, and everyone sort of went, I was like, "Okay, shut up."
And go back to sort of face masks and stuff. Even if you just, we all hate it. No one likes having something over their face. But this is some of the stuff I've seen sort of flying around and hearing people, even though I work with, talk about it, is just like, "Oh, I don't care about me and my family," and this is something that you hear quite a lot. And when you think, like, if wearing a face mask is even going to offer you 1% of protection, against you and then potentially you spreading it onto your family, why wouldn't you do that? It's not a massive inconvenience.
Well, the trouble is with that isn't it? "Will only care about me and mine." Well, unfortunately, you are not living on top of a mountain with just you and yours. You happen to be surrounded by lots of other people.
At
all times.
You're not a hunter-gatherer. You are
actually.
You're essentially a Labrador going to collect things that other people have got for you.
You probably should actually be worried about what everybody else is doing and not just caring about you and yours, because you don't live in a life of isolation. In fact, the fact that we're isolated has royally wound you up. It's actually counterintuitive to have the mindset that they only care about me and mine, because when you're stuck with only you and yours, you're telling everybody that this lockdown is damaging your mental health because of a lack of society. And that's fine, because it's true, and it is. But again, it's that selective outrage. I'm outraged that I have to wear a mask because I only care about me and mine. Well, you're not just you and yours. You are grieving over a lack of society at the moment, which we said last week. People are in grief at the moment in a very real way. But yet, as you say, that's denial stage. Well, no, I'm only worried about me and mine. You're not, though, because you've already said that you want society to come back together. Well, everybody needs to kind of stop infecting everybody if we can, to a degree that the NHS can deal with it, because the NHS
key indicator.
Because the NHS is being hideously underfunded, and as I've said, the biggest tragedy of all of this is that if we come out of this and we do not hold the government accountable in times of crisis, they've got to do what they've got to do. But afterwards, you fucking march up at the door and go, "You got to change shit, because this cannot happen again. You cannot keep the NHS underfunded, so the next time a pandemic comes, we can't cope." We should be.
The irony is that we've actually managed to cope fairly well.
I mean, it's done amazingly well considering, but the other...
And they'll use that as an argument for not giving it more funding.
But they always will do.
You were fine. But you were fine.
No, but we weren't, because the only reason NHS handled it fine,
just disintegrating to ashes.
Yeah,
it just, and we do what we do. So many.
But also the other problem is as well,
we just head down and you just get on with it.
Yeah, the thing is as well that you can invoke a sense of duty during a time of crisis, and the biggest worry you've got is that when this all goes over, the amount of people that will leave the NHS because they've done that, it's broken them.
Oh, I know firsthand. People tell me they're going to leave.
Yeah, oh for sure, and I don't blame them. And this is the problem you're going to have.
It's almost a sort of military mindset in a way,
Yeah.
where you just say it's just right. You're in the trenches. This is dog shit. Let's just fucking do the job.
But everybody does. Everybody in NHS, and are massive. You're all fucking superstars. You dig deeper, the worse it gets, because you have that sense of duty. You got into this job to help people, and at the moment, people need the most help. The moment that dies off again, though, it breaks somebody, and they'll go, "I just can't do this anymore. I'm out. I can't go through this again." And this is the trouble. It's like, it's all well and good saying, but you coped. We didn't. You had to lock a country down because we couldn't cope. That shows you how little we could cope, because you couldn't let it just run. It wasn't like you turned around and said, look, it's okay. We've got so many hospitals and nurses and stuff that we'll be able to deal with it. We're going to flood most of the protection to the nurses so that they can deal with you guys. And you may have to be, it's like the Middle East do with MERS. The Middle East, it just happens now. They deal with it. They've got the infrastructure to deal with MERS, and that's what happens. We don't have it. So you have to lock a country of 70 million people down so that your NHS can, quote unquote, prove that they can cope. Well, you clearly can't cope because you had to make all the other measures perfect for the environment to it to cope. So no, it doesn't cope.
But that's not how they're going to present it, is it?
No,
we know
this is what I'm saying.
We know that
we
historically.
have to, the NHS, the people, the unions, the whoever else have to come together and go, no, you don't get to spin this as our NHS coped the best. No, we didn't cope. We had to put every position in place for it to be in a perfect condition for it.
We had to bring retired people back into the profession.
You had to pull people out of retirement.
We had to
guilt
redeploy people. We had to cancel like outpatient clinics and things. We had to do so much.
You had to bring the army in to do the job.
Yeah.
You had to build extra hospitals that you couldn't use because you didn't have the staff for them, which was a massive waste of money. We're going to spend £9 billion building a hospital in a week. Fuck me, that's an engineering achievement. Oh wait, we've got nobody to put in it. Well, what was the fucking point? Send that $9 billion into the NHS, get some bastard nurses trained, and actually give them an incentive that isn't a shit pay packet and a fuck ton of work, and then you might actually have an NHS that can cope. But no, we're going to prove to you that we can build hospitals like that. Well, that's great. What are you going to do with it once you've got it? Tell everybody we made it. Great. Well, it's not fucking working. So it was a waste of time. You just did it. You just pissed into the wind. That's what you've done. You've shown how big a man you are by whapping your chappy out and pissing into the wind. You just got wet. Like, well, whoop-de-doo.
Flexing at this. Like, oh, look at it. But look at this. Look how good it is.
Look at this hospital that we have made that holds all of these people. And look at all these beds that we've put in when we told everybody that we didn't have enough beds.
And all these ventilators.
Yeah.
Where are the patients? Oh, well, we haven't got any staff. So
we can't actually put anybody in there because we've got nobody to watch the place.
So why can't we put those ventilators? So those ventilators could go to the hospitals that do have patients?
No, because they have to stay here. And then what happened to them all afterwards? Well, we just took them all.
We'll probably sell them for like a third.
Yeah, we're going to sell them off to everybody else to recuperate some of the money we spunked on the fucking hospital. You're like, mate, it's painful. You know what I mean? It's like...
This seems quite an interesting thing, though, because a lot of the reason I say I'm doing the nursing degree and things like that, but a lot of people are put off by careers in nursing because it is a degree, and I for one personally don't think it should be a degree.
No.
I appreciate that
you have to have a degree to be a paramedic now.
I appreciate that there has to be this level of knowledge, but there's got to be other ways of demonstrating that than going through this process. It's, it might be controversial, probably putting myself out there to get an absolute roasting from someone, but
the trouble is, I think I agree, and I sort of, I think
discussed it a bit last night, didn't we?
Yeah, the trouble is that you're now stuck paying £9 grand a year to do a degree in a job that doesn't pay the equivocal amount for the skills that you've learned or the amount of money it's spent to get those skills. That's the problem. Now, if it was like they did the same kind of thing like a medical school based thing, but it was more sort of, as you say, experience, you have to do a certain amount of theory work, but you spend 5 years, almost like nursing should be an apprenticeship. That's what it should be.
It used to be.
Yeah. It should be that. There's no point turning it into a degree to get yourself into a massive amount of debt to get paid a fucking pittance to do the amount of work you're expected to do, when actually you should be able to incrementally earn more up to the point of when you fully qualify and you have a decent wage. You've incrementally earned more as your skill set improves. And what it does is, because obviously the problem you're facing at the moment is that you're banded into what level you're on, so people won't listen to you because you're only this level. If you're growing through this NVQ like it used to, or this apprenticeship, people can actually see that you're doing the work. Every year you come back, you're moving up. It's not like, well, until you qualify, you are just a student. It's like, no, I'm not just a student. I am somebody who is gaining knowledge every single day. I'm still here doing the job with you. I'm still here dealing with the death and the grief and the pain and the exaltation when it all goes right. Yet it makes it very easy to pin you into a certain box. Well, he's only a trainee-ness. He's just still doing his no. If he's 3 years into a 5-year MVQ, fuck me, mate. You're bloody flying up there now. You've got all that you've done. You've done your time in the trenches and you're getting the thing for it. But this is why nurses aren't bothering anymore, because you've got to get yourself into maybe 18 to 27 grand's worth of debt for a job that only pays 26 grand a year when you come out. It's like you're in more debt than you earn in a year. What's the point? Why would you do it?
Yeah,
you wouldn't. And that's why people aren't anymore. It's
and
the same thing with teachers.
And your earning potential is capped.
Yeah, which is a joke.
In this country, I think other places it's different.
It's like how many dead people do you need to save, or how much grief do you have to deal with before people go, you know what, maybe you should have a pay rise.
The funny thing is, you mentioned about not getting remunerated in the sense of the amount of work that you have to do and so on, but it's also the accountability and the responsibility that you have as well, because
the emotional stress, the trauma,
you think that if you
don't just turn up to work and deal with what you're dealing with for 8 hours.
Yeah, and I'm 8.
Well, I was being generous.
As a band 2, whatever nurse I'm working with is technically responsible for every decision that I make.
Yeah.
So they're not just accountable and responsible for their own decisions, but also the unregistered staff working alongside them.
Yeah.
24, 25 grand ain't enough.
Well, no, it's laughable, isn't it? It really is laughable. The amount of responsibility,
so tragic,
work, effort, and everything else that you have to do. It is an insulting amount of money to pay somebody for what you expect of them.
Yeah, that's horrendous.
That's because we don't value because it's not a money making entity. It's there for
public service, isn't it? Public service. Yeah. You're never going to make as much money as you would in a private sector.
No,
even private healthcare doesn't make as much money.
No, but then it becomes contemptuous to the person that has to fund it, doesn't it? Now we automatically pay for it from a tax point of view, and we use it and we need it. We'll defend it. But when you're the one footing the bill, it's always going to be seen as a bit of a contemptuous hemorrhaging, because you're like, if we can kind of not.
That as well is that with private care, I've known this from people that have worked in private hospitals. On the physio side of things, is that you're encouraged to give or offer treatments that they don't need. So it's a huge moral as well, because you're trying to add more to the bill. And that's almost how the American system works. I mean, you have insurance and stuff, but
that's just if the insurance doesn't want to pay out, you don't get it, which is awful.
Yeah. So, really. But hey, stay safe.
Exactly. So, I mean, we're going to conclude on that lovely note by basically going, look, hopefully, as of Monday, we're going to come out of this with a little bit of hope. They need to, because if they understand anything about the mob, which we are, you got to dangle the carrot a little bit, because at the moment there's no.
It's going to go back into a tier system.
Which just seems the most.
I can't see it going any other way. The data's heading in the right direction, and I think even our own MPs are starting to get like.
I mean, this is the thing as well, isn't it? If he doesn't come out, he's going to have a full rebellion, because half of the bench aren't happy about it on either side. A tier system is a sensible way to come out. I don't think anybody would really necessarily disagree with coming out in a tiered system, easing it into summer, and then slowly seeing how we go, and then basically going into an annual jab style thing like we do with the flu.
I think the tier system is going to work better with the vaccination rollout. What I don't think will work would be regional differentiation between tiers. I just don't, because the trouble is it's not going to be policed that well, is it? Because
No, yeah, I see what you mean.
say
Yeah, so like
Hampshire and
we all
Sussex,
come
let's
out
say tier
into
1,
tier
tier
3
2.
until the next amount of people have been vaccinated. Then we can move into tier 2, and the next month we
That's the
come
way
into
I
tier
think that
1.
it will probably
It also,
be
as you say, what it also does is keeps it fair, so nobody can kick off saying, "Well, why do I have to be in tier 3 when they get to live their life?" Because that's what you're going to have. I think
I mean,
if we
you
can
can't have,
learn any lesson from the last 2 tier systems, then because the first tier
we
system
haven't got
was,
enough
wasn't
police
it?
to
It
catch
was,
murderers and paedophiles. What makes you think that they're going to just be on the borders of counties stopping people from travelling? But it's true.
yeah, exactly. So
Just
I think,
gradually a national global sort of easing of restrictions. It's the
yeah,
to me, it's the only logical approach.
yeah, I'd agree, and I think that's going to be the best way going forward. So everybody agrees.